Welcome to the Slam Diego Show here on Roundtable with your hosts, as always, Hunter and Anthony. And Hunter, it's been not the greatest week for the Padres. Obviously, we've had some ups, some very high ups this season, and some downs. This is one of the more down weeks. We got to start with it. Mason Miller's streak, unfortunately, coming to a close. 34 and 2/3 innings. Just tough to see for our guy.
Totally, and it's super frustrating to see on something that was a really controversial call that could have gone either way. In my opinion,
That was
the ball
such a foul ball.
It looked very foul. All the replays show, that it was at least an inch off the foul line. That people were trying to say, oh well, the plane of the ball was still over the line. Anyways, but unfortunately, yes, his streak did come to an end, but that is one of the most dominant stretches of baseball we've seen from a relief pitcher ever. 34 and 2/3 scoreless innings is unreal, no matter how you look at that. It's insane. So obviously, it's sad that it's no longer a thing for Mason, but obviously props to him for what he did do.
Props to Mason Miller, man. I mean, to keep that streak going, especially in between seasons, like that is so tough to do, to end a season one way and start it another way. But you mentioned one of the best things ever in history. It's only been done it's the eighth longest by a reliever since 1961. And there's been a lot of relief pitchers, a lot of Hall of Fame relief pitchers since 1961 that have not accomplished that stat. So you got to put this one up in the record books. And luckily for Mason, as we know with what we've seen, it's just going to be the start of another streak, right? I mean, he did give up the 2 against the Cubs, but he's going to get back on his high horse and he's going to make batters look silly again. And that's what he does for a living. But where we start off, where we left off last time, was in Mexico City. Obviously, the Padres took care of business in Game 1, but Game 2 was rather unfortunate.
Yeah, honestly, Game 2 was kind of like the opposite of what happened in Game 1. Game 1, we obviously had a little bit of a later slow burn comeback and ended up getting the win. This one was the opposite. We took a very commanding lead and then kind of just imploded, and the bullpen decided to give the Diamondbacks the win. So, as you can see, we did score 6 to their 0 to start the game, which was really good. We always usually perform better when we start early. I believe we scored in the top of the second first. Yep, Luis Campusano on an RBI double, which take a second to say Luis Campusano has continued to stay hot. But it's sad because Michael King had a really quality start, and we ended up blowing that start for him. He did go 6 innings and did give up 2 runs, but 2 runs in 6 innings with 8 strikeouts, like, I'm really okay with that. That's a quality start. I'll take that 9 out of 10 days of the week. That's a good thing. But I mean, after that, our bullpen comes in and just absolutely implodes, like I said. David Morgan came in, only got 1 out, gave up 4 earned runs. Rodriguez came in, and unfortunately, he gets the loss, but he gave up 2 runs and only recorded 2 outs. And then Marinaccio only recorded 1 out and gave up another 4 runs. So, kind of a bummer because only, I think, 2 of those 10 runs I just talked about was a home run. The rest were just doubles and, scoring base runners. So I want to say Timmy Tawa ended up hitting a grand slam. So that was 4 of those runs. But other than that, it was just doubles and hits, and they rallied, and they ended up totaling 15 hits on the game. So obviously they did a great job offensively, and their bats got hot, but our bullpen can't let that happen. It's a really sad thing to see from the bullpen, especially knowing bullpen as one of our strengths for the Padres.
I believe that Timmy Tawa was the first that kind of started the scoring run too. I think it was earlier on in that. And what's tough is, again, and you can write it off, it's 2 games in Mexico City. Mexico City is at elevation. And so you have the ball flying a little bit more there, which I guess what I've heard is they did a better job this year of managing it than they have in prior years. So I guess 2 years ago, there was a combined 20 homers hit between the 2 teams in that series. And those are regular season games. So those do have an effect on, season metrics and whatnot. So luckily a lot better in this series. There was not 20 home runs hit, even though like this game was going, it was very comfortable early. I mean, the Padres got an extensive lead. I mean, 6-1 early, and then they kind of collapse. And one of the guys that's tough to see with the collapse was obviously David Morgan, struggled, and he's actually, as of today, he got transferred to AAA. But seeing Bradley Rodriguez struggle, last week we actually wanted to talk about him and how good of a start to the season he was doing, because
Yeah.
he was a guy who pretty much came out of nowhere. And you want to keep going with that, Hunter?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, we ended the podcast, and I go to Anthony. I'm like, oh crap! Like I forgot to mention, like Bradley Rodriguez has been having a great start to the season. He's technically qualifying as a rookie this year. He's a young guy. He's looked really good. And then I turned my phone on, and he's given up, freaking 4 runs and wasn't looking as sharp. So that's a bummer. And obviously, he still is good outside of this outing, but it is just super funny and comedic timing that right when I want to talk good about him, all of a sudden he blows up and ends up losing the game for us technically. Um, but yeah, like we continue to talk about, I mean, our bullpen is one of our strengths, and even after a good offensive day, because Manny had 2 home runs with 3 RBIs, we score 7 on 11 hits. Like that's a pretty good day, especially when we go up 6-0 at one point. We should win that game 99% of the time. Um, but this is just one of the days where our kind of backup bullpen guys just didn't really have it, and we kind of lost it. And after, I'm going to be honest, after David Morgan came in and did blow that game, I'm a little surprised we continue to stay with the trend of, not our go-to guys out of the bullpen. Like we didn't see Jason Adam. We didn't see, obviously we didn't see Mason Miller in the end, but we kind of went to guys that I'm not super surprised did blow up this game besides Rodriguez, but Marinaccio hasn't been great in the season, and neither is David Morgan, and they're kind of, the main reasons we lost, both giving up 4 runs apiece. So, again, good production from our offense, which is a trend that we'll kind of continue to see throughout this week. Our offense is slowly and steadily getting better, which is awesome, but our bullpen definitely needs to keep it on locks, especially when we're in a starting pitcher dilemma, and Michael King does give us a good start when we need it. We have to take advantage of the good starts that we get out of our pitchers, because right now with our quality of pitchers and our pitchers on the IL, we're not going to get a ton.
And that's why it's tough, because to spoil such a good Michael King start with the bullpen. And that's why it is his first season, even though Craig Stammen's been around for a while. But you kind of have to question some of these bullpen moves, because obviously you don't have to straight put your B lineup out there as far as the bullpen. Technically Bradley Rodriguez is more toward your A lineup just because of how good he's been. But I mean, Marinaccio's not been hot. Wendy Peralta's kind of been your cleanup guy, and he was okay here. But David Morgan, I don't know why they kept going to him first out of the bullpen pretty much every time. I get it. It was, a 6-run game, so you have leeway there. But I think once it gets close, especially because this is a division rival, you probably want to put in some of your top guys at some point, right? I mean, you want to get Jason Adam in there just so that way you can leverage it and still salvage some of the lead. Because even though, Tawa did hit a grand slam, that's still 4. And at that point, you still had a slight lead. It's not like the floodgates completely open, but it's just kind of a bummer that we saw this week that there were a couple instances where kind of the bullpen let up pretty badly. And it's tough to see that we weren't able to win this one.
And I think one of the most frustrating things about watching this game is that this tends to happen with the Padres. I feel like for some reason, it doesn't matter who we put in. We don't know when to pull them. We don't know when to get someone else going. Like we substitute David Morgan to replace Michael King in the bottom of the 7th. He goes and gets James McCann to fly out, so we got 1 out. But then he gives up a single. Then he gives up another single to Arenado, and then he gives up another single to Alek Thomas, which luckily Jose Fernandez didn't score on. But 3 hits in a row, like it's not like he's walking people. It's not like control isn't there. No, he's getting hit at this point. He is giving up pitches that are getting hit. And then, as you know it, Timmy Tawa comes in and just smacks a little grand slam, which still doesn't give them the lead. We're still up 1. So now it's, bases cleared with 1 out. And then immediately Rodriguez comes in and gives up a double, and then a walk, and then another double. So it's too many hits. It's too many pitches over the heart of the plate. And yes, their hitting did do their job. They get paid millions to hit, obviously, but I mean, we just can't collapse on ourselves like that. It's one thing if we just can't find it and have to go to a different pitcher in the bullpen because you can't throw strikes, but giving up too many hits just because you're throwing down the middle is definitely an issue. And honestly, David Morgan probably should have been pulled after back-to-back hits especially after 3 hits in a row.
You can give them a little bit of grace because of the lead and because so far in the season they haven't blown a game up to this proportion yet. So
Yeah.
it's, I guess, going based off what you've seen before, you didn't know it was going to get this out of hand, but at least you gotta have some guardrails at some point, right? Like you mentioned, after giving back-to-back hits or something along those lines, yeah, you might want to get the bullpen up and then start that process. But it's tough to see, especially because this game was a winnable game, and I think that's why if this game was out of control from the get-go, it's a little bit different. You tip your cap to Arizona and you move on. But this was a more than winnable game, and it's frustrating to see how this game led to the stretch that they went on a little bit that we're a part of. Going to the next game where even though we do end up fighting and winning, which was super fun to watch, but Randy Vasquez did not have his best night, giving up 5, and the Cubbies get 7. I mean, and that has to do a lot, with even though you can see in the middle there that the bullpen held strong for a while, it still wasn't perfect.
Yeah. And like I said, the offense did good. And, moving on, we get into this next game against the Cubs, which ultimately did go our way, which was an exciting game to watch. We win 9-7, and it's another really good production from our offense. I mean, 14 hits. I'm always going to love seeing that in the hit column, and 9 runs. That's great, especially because Randy Vasquez improved to 3-0 on the season. Even though, it wasn't his best start. He gave up 5 earned in 5 innings, only 4 strikeouts. Gave up 5 hits, 3 walks, so a good amount of base runners, 2 of them being home runs. But ultimately, he still gets the win, which is really cool just to look back and be like, Randy's 3-0. And yes, he's been our ace. He's been great. He still have a sub-3 ERA even after this. But now that we see, even after our starter gives up 5 runs, right, this is one of those starts where it wasn't a quality start. It wasn't something that, we're going to win off every time. But then our bullpen comes in, and for the most part, they do a pretty solid job, right? They do give up 2 runs late because Mason Miller and the whole situation we'll get into in a second. But Morejon comes in for an inning and 2/3, doesn't give up a single run. And Jason Adam comes in for an inning and a third and doesn't give up a run. So that's when our bullpen is nails when we need them to be, which was really good. But yeah, like I said, we ended up scoring 9. We scored 2 more in the bottom of the 7th, 1 more in the bottom of the 8th. And it all starts with production from the top half of the lineup, which we haven't been getting a ton of because Laureano's slumping. He's now down to a 255 average. Tatis is hitting 250 still without a home run. Merrill's hitting 213, and Manny's hitting 230. But in this game, Laureano went 1 for 4 with a walk. Tatis went 2 for 5. Merrill went 1 for 5 with a walk and an RBI and a run. And Manny Machado went 3 for 4 with 3 runs. So we see this top half production. It's a really good thing because those are our guys. Those are the guys we're paying the most money. Those are our star players. This is what we want to see out of them all the time. So it's really good to see that and then still have that fight and want to win, especially scoring 3 in the first. And that really helps, obviously, back up Randy Vasquez, even though he didn't have his best start.
What I loved seeing in this game was how the bottom of the lineup contributed. Because obviously Miguel Andujar needs to play more at hitting 313 and going 1 for 3 with an RBI and a walk in this game. But right below him, I mean, Ty France with 2 hits and 4 RBIs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he hit 2 homers in this game, didn't he? No, he did not hit a homer. He got a double and a triple, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But
that sounds
yeah. Good. But Ty France has been on point in this game, or rather lately. And then even Castellanos comes up with an RBI hit here too, even though he does strike out twice in 4 at-bats. But that's really good production from the bottom of the lineup that, I mean, obviously majorly contributed to this when you're mentioning it, that at the top of the lineup, they're kind of slumping. So that's why, even though Randy Vasquez did not have the quality start, this was a great game for the Padres because they showed the fight at the bottom of the lineup, getting 9 runs on 14 hits and pretty much continuing to add on throughout the game. And it's against pretty decent relievers, too, with the Cubs. I mean, Matthew Boyd was their day 1 starter. And then Ben Brown is not a bad reliever. Phil Maton's not great. Then you got Jacob Webb in the back of their bullpen. So they have a decent bullpen, too. We were just very lucky to get to them and be able to get on top. But you mentioned it, obviously, in the top of the 9th, giving up the 2 runs to the Cubs. And it started with just some ridiculousness by the umpires.
Yeah, it was just like It's funny to even talk about because I think it's such a bad call, especially if you go back and watch the clip fully. I mean, Ty France is staring at the ball on the foul territory, like clearly not touching the line, and honestly, not like close to it, but at least an inch away. Um, and immediately umpire calls it fair, and Ty France is going like, "You got to be kidding me!" And that's an unreviewable play, unfortunately. But it's kind of ridiculous, and obviously that isn't ultimately what gave up the 2 runs. I believe I'm pretty sure that was to start the inning,
Yeah.
which is frustrating. Um, but after that, I mean, Dansby Swanson was sitting heater, and he knew it was coming, so he ends up getting a single. PCA ends up finding a little gap, so now they have bases loaded, and then Nico Horner just ends up grounding out. I think a wild pitch comes in next. Mason Miller just bounced one. But ultimately, he gets out of it. He goes on to throw 9 straight sliders since he realized they were sitting fastball. Gets Michael Busch to ground out and then strikes out Bregman looking silly. So ultimately, he did what he needed to do. And we still got the win, which is huge. But it was nice that we had that cushion just because he gave us the 2. But realistically, I think this is just a tiny bump in the road. I don't think this is something we'll see out of Mason very often. And obviously, it all started with, again, a call that I think should have gone the other way.
And you can tip your cap to the Cubs a little bit too for at least trying to get creative against Mason Miller, just sitting fastball. Because obviously everyone knows you're not going to hit the slider. And then once Mason figured that out too, you mentioned he threw 9 straight. So it'll be interesting to see as the season goes on how players adjust to Mason Miller. Because that's what the game of baseball is adjustments. And that's why for him to be able to go that long without giving up a run is incredible in the history of the sport, just because everyone's able to make an adjustment at some point. I mean, comparing it to another stud in the game right now, Jose Soriano was hurt in his last start a little bit. He had like a neck cramp or something, but he gave up his scoreless streak to a solo homer against the White Sox. Like these things are meant to be broken. So it's just incredible by Mason Miller to rally and get out of it, because keep in mind, I mean, like you mentioned, it was bases loaded, no outs, and he was able to then get 3 straight outs, even though one of them did give up a run and then was a wild pitch. But it could have been a blown save on top of it. So you still got to credit Mason Miller to be able to get out of the jam, to be able to still secure the win, because it could have been, it could have been a loss.
It totally, it could have resulted really quick in a loss for us if they continue to figure it out and find out all of a sudden, oh, he's throwing sliders only now, and they're just going to sit slider now. Luckily, they didn't change their approach, and Mason obviously fooled them, made them look silly. But that's one of those things where Mason is still the best pitcher or closer in baseball, regardless if there's a little hiccup, right? He's still dominant. He can still switch to that slider and easily get 2 outs, no problem. It was just, like I said, a little bump in the road that all started with some nonsense, and then ultimately the 3 guys next just happened to take good approaches and squeak little hits through. None of them were hit, too hard. None of them were like smoked barrels. They were just, they were honestly just ground outs that happened to find a hole and ended up not being ground outs.
That's going to happen, right? I mean, you can't cover every single inch of the field, and especially in the day and age where there's no more, shift. You can't over extremely protect the left side of the field or the right side of the field against a certain hitting matchup, which reminds me, it's kind of funny because a name I thought of recently that kind of came out of nowhere was Joey Gallo. Isn't he still trying to make a return as a pitcher? I forget what organization he was in.
Too much recently, but he might be still,
because he could throw 90 plus. But I feel like a guy like that, even though he totally lost all of his confidence in New York hitting wise, he should have tried to make a comeback as a hitter once they banned the shift. So I feel like he and some other of those left-handed power hitters were like the bane of the shift's existence, where he hit right into it every single time.
Yeah.
But that's it for that one. Joey Gallo is just a funny player because it's like, I mean, he had the legendary start growing up. Did you hear about the story about him? Where so he's from Vegas. And you know who else is from Vegas is Greg Maddux. And I think he obviously he was a stud in high school. That's why he got found out. I forget if he threw a no-hitter or something in high school. And then that night he took Greg Maddox's daughter out to prom.
You're right.
Like
I have heard that.
just
Legendary.
like just like all-time stories where it's kind of hard to not say you peaked in high school because you pulled off something so legendary like that. But then he goes to the majors and he hits, 400 plus foot homers for the Texas Rangers for years and years until he
Yeah.
just forgets how to hit a baseball in New York. But it's just funny how some of those things go. Back to the Cubs and the Padres. This game was terrible. I mean, this
Yeah.
is another one, like we mentioned, where the bullpen just kind of gives it up later. And it's hard to win a baseball game when you're in it until you're not, and then the bullpen just kind of falls apart.
Yeah, it's definitely not a pretty game. We kind of just were all over the place this game, if I'm being honest. Bueller had an okay start, not his best, definitely not the worst, but he went 4 2/3, giving up 2 earned with only 4 strikeouts. So you eliminate just one of those runs, and immediately it's a better start, it's a quality start. But those 2 runs just in the top of the second off a Dansby Swanson double, which he's been heating up, but things like that kind of just kill the momentum, especially early. But then luckily we do kind of respond. Xander Bogaerts hits a solo shot. He's leading the team with 5 home runs, which kind of just goes to show our team has not been hitting lots of home runs, but just not a lot of offensive production from us today, other than Bogaerts and Ty France. I mean, 6 hits, 10 strikeouts on the team, so nothing too good. Luckily, we did score 3. I believe Ty France also had an RBI later in the 4th, which ended up tying the game. And then I want to say, yeah, they scored 2 in the top of the 6th off another double. It was Nico Horner this time. And, things like that. It's just we kind of have been giving up too many hits in clutch situations. We get to 2 outs, and we just can't seem to get the 3rd out. And that's really brutal because that's what's been happening. Like, they've been scoring – the teams we've been playing have been scoring so many runs when there's already 2 outs. Kyle Hart came in, only recorded 2 outs, and gave up 2 more after Bueller. Then David Morgan came in for 2 outs and only gave up 1 run, but still gave up a run. And then Wandy Peralta came in and gave up 3. So, again, this is one of our game where it's kind of our backup guys in the bullpen, not our go-to guys in the bullpen. And they just kind of explode again, and we don't go scoreless until luckily Marinaccio comes in and goes 2 innings and gives up none, which was nice to see. But other than that, our bullpen was looking pretty bad today. And like I said, our offense, 10 strikeouts to only 6 hits is just too many to think you're going to win a ball game, especially with 2 of our runs being from the same 2 guys.
And that's it. It's not winning baseball, to put it plainly. When your bullpen can't come in and hold it down. And the thing I was thinking about, I got to ask you, because Walker Buehler has had several starts to start the season so far, and we were excited about him. But the numbers don't lie. He's pitching to a 5.4 ERA. To be honest, the Walker Buehler experience has not been that great so far on the Padres compared to a guy that the Cubs just got over the offseason in Edward Cabrera. That sucks for the National League that a good team got Edward Cabrera, because even though we did get 3 off him, which is pretty nice, including a homer that Xander Bogaerts hit in the bottom of the 2nd. But, he strikes out 7, and he is, in my opinion, one of the nastiest pitchers in the league. And that's going to be tough again come playoff time, that you're going to have to face a rotation like that with the Cubs, because the Cubs have a good lineup. It's just their pitching that's kind of eh. But now that you bolster it with a guy who's, again, 3-0 on the season to a 3.06 ERA, that's going to be tough. And you can understand how these instances set the tone, because then you got Hobie Milner behind him, who's throwing basically from his shoelace. And then you have behind him Rollison, who I'm not familiar with, but he's pitching to a 0 ERA to start the season. So it's kind of like, when they got it, they got it. And then we have our B lineup in pitching wise. And it's not even a fair competition out there. It's terrible.
It's just ugly. Not much more I can say than that. It's not what we want. It's not what we expect is going to happen. But ultimately, it's it's ugly.
And then moving on to the next game, which doesn't get any prettier. Sure, it's a 1-run game, so that's a little bit nicer. But it's still, you're losing a baseball game, and you're losing it at home on a day game where you only get 3 hits. I mean, the Padres are just not having a good week. And thankfully, they had a day off on a Thursday and it looked like they had a nice, they had a nice Padres Foundation dinner. So hopefully they had a little, reminisce time. But I mean, this has not been a good week for the Padres, and they continue it with their Wednesday afternoon performance.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at, like you just said, we had 3 hits. Luckily, we scored 4 runs. So that's a good hit to runs ratio. But I mean, 3 hits to 4 runs is just not going to cut it. 2 of those hits being home runs, right? So luckily, Nick Castellanos and Miguel Andujar both getting their first home runs as Padres, in the brown and gold. Love to see it. But, I mean, there you go again. The top of the lineup, not really producing. Like, look at those first 5 hitters. You go 0 for 3, 1 for 3 with an RBI. Thank you, Tatis. But then 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts, 0 for 4, 0 for 4. Like, that can't happen, especially in a game when you're trying to go ahead and win the series. It's an important game, especially when we're tight with the Dodgers, right? We're still right there for first place in the NL West. I believe we're half a game back, but this is also, Matt Waldron was pitching, and like we said, he has not been good in his starts with us so far. And this was a better one. This was only 3 earned in 5 innings, which is not terrible. But then Morejon comes in, and unfortunately, he loses it and gives up a run. And then later in the game, Jason Adam, unfortunately, also gives up a run, which is brutal, especially because we were right in that game, tied at 4s. It's just a bummer because this was a game I feel like we really could have taken control over, and our bats just have not been producing in tight situations recently. They have this season for sure. We've been coming back. We've been doing good, but later in the games, the top of the lineup just hasn't been doing their best. So, like I said in that Mexico series, we did so well because our top of the lineup was producing, but recently the bottom half of our lineup has been having to pick it up. Like we said, though, Ty France has been doing a lot better recently, but Andujar should probably be starting every day. I mean, he's hitting .313 with an 800 OPS. That's better than 90% of our team right now. Cronenworth needs to get benched, unfortunately, because he just can't figure it out hitting-wise. And Camposano's been great. So, luckily, we just need to come together as a team and figure out how to stretch the lineup 1 through 9 and continue to work together and not rely on, 2 or 3 specific hitters.
And not just 2 or 3 specific hitters, but also not rely on a bullpen to have to pitch a gem. Because, I mean, we've seen it this week. They haven't been able to hold up in it. It's going to happen. I mean, we're about a month and a half into the season, and they've been pretty much perfect on the most part. So it's going to happen eventually that they're going to have a week like this that's not perfect. And, yeah, Matt Waldron has his best start, only giving up 3. But really the kicker is when Jason Adam gives up a solo homer on a fastball down the middle. Like it's just bad pitching location. Even though Jason Adams has been good on the season, you still can't make those pitches. So it's tough to watch. It's tough to see. And it is good to see though the bottom of the lineup. And it's funny how this week baseball is such a streaky sport because if I'd say the 3 things to summarize this week are bullpen implosions, the bottom of the lineup hitting, and somehow, some way, we're staying in a lot of these games, even though we really have no right to be. And this was one of those games where it was closer. But it's tough to watch. And Fernando Tatis Jr. just can't hit homers. I mean, thankfully, he did get a hit in this game, and he got the RBI. But he's been struggling on the season. And this game was another example of it. And we can turn here to a little stat sheet of what Fernando's been doing so far in the season. But one thing it doesn't show that we were talking about earlier is that really the one metric that he has really changed this season compared to others is his launch angle. And his launch angle is about a third of what it historically has been. Last season was at about 10 degrees. Now it's about 3. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah, it's definitely weird, and it's like you're confused as how is that even happening because this is a dude who's hit 40 home runs in a season, and you see a lot of allegations like, oh, well, he's not on steroids anymore. He's not the same since, and that's honestly not necessarily true because as you can see, his barrel percentage is still up there, his average exit velo is up there, and his hard hit percentage is literally the best in baseball. He's smoking baseballs. He's just getting one unlucky and 2, not having enough launch angle on it. So, yeah, obviously that's not something you'd love to see, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Hard hit percentage being the best in baseball is awesome, but we just need to see that launch angle turn a little bit, come up a little bit. He's been doing a lot of inside out swings, if you've noticed, trying to take everything to right field, which is okay on outside pitches, middle away pitches. I love it. Hit it to right field, hit it to right center, hit your oppo home runs, hit your oppo doubles any day of the week. I love that. But he doesn't want to turn on pitches. He gets fastballs in and will let his hands get blown up and jam himself on purpose to try and put it to right field. But that doesn't work all the time. And he's honestly really good at hitting inside pitches when he turns on them and explodes. And that's why he hits so well on, if you look at his sliders inside and fastballs up and in, is because he has such quick hands and he's able to turn on them, but he just hasn't been doing that. And I'm not exactly sure why, but as you can see, like I just said, his hard hit percentage is still up there, barrel percentage is still up there, and his exit velo is still up there. So it's just a matter of launch angle and getting the ball over the fence.
And I think it'll turn around. I mean, it's so early in the season to say that it's going to be the end all be all. And that's the thing, is that we're still in the first month-ish of the season. So a lot of these things, again, this is, you could say, our worst week other than opening week we've had, which is pretty fortunate to say. I mean, Fernando still hasn't hit a homer, which it's frustrating, but I mean, if you think about it, if we could have an inverse of what we had last year, I think we would take that. So much is so where he hasn't had to put the team on his back so far this year. And then hopefully if he's able to turn it around, because the rest of the team is picking him up. I mean, we've been talking about it all, pod, that it's been the bottom of the lineup that's been supporting the top this week. And if eventually Fernando can turn it on, I mean, that would be great. Now, obviously, again, it's just launch angle, which I don't know how you change that. I mean, I was never a great hitter, so I couldn't figure that out myself. But you gotta, I guess, for lack of a better term, get under the ball. But like you mentioned, he's such a good pull hitter, and he's not been pulling the ball at all this year. So I'm curious to see how they switch it up in the lab, and they get, there's so much technology to be able to change stuff now. It's almost kind of surprising that we haven't seen so much as a change of approach yet. But luckily, the team coming in this week is not a great pitching team in the Chicago White Sox. Now, unfortunately, we do have to face Munetaka Murakami, who is a top slugger and was someone Hunter and I really wanted the Padres to get in the offseason. Now, sure, Ty France has been really good at first, so we've been fortunate in what we've gotten for a good deal. But this is going to be an interesting series against the White Sox because they're not a terrible team, but they're not a good team. And in my opinion, I see this series kind of being like a trap series almost, because you can't lose to them, but they're also going to give it everything they got. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see because, I mean, we're right there with the Dodgers. Like I said, half a game back. They just dropped a series to the Marlins. So obviously, lots of things are possible. It's baseball. We could end up getting swept. That is technically a possibility. But realistically, my thoughts here is we win at least 2 of the 3 and hopefully go on and get the sweep. Now, the problem is they have been a lot better offensively than we have thought. Their pitching is still not great. So hopefully our offense keeps it going and we can produce through the entire lineup, like I said. But we need our pitching to be on lock because otherwise we're going to lose games again, like 10-8, 9-8, 7-6, those types of things. So we need our bullpen to get back to what they used to be. So luckily they had yesterday off. Like you said, they had their dinner. Hopefully everything is getting back to normal. They're getting back to work and they're in the lab. But we need our bullpen to go out there and pick up our pitchers if they can't get quality starts. But ultimately, we're looking for quality starts from, I believe we have Yerman Marquez going tonight, which, as we've seen this season, could go various different ways. We could see him go 7 shutty. We could also see him give up 6 runs in 4 innings. So we don't know exactly what we're going to get. We're hoping for some quality starts, and then the bullpen carry us to Mason Miller, and then hopefully Mason Miller shuts it down because we've scored at least 1 or 2 more runs than our opponent.
I hope we don't give up a homer to Murakami this weekend. That's my goal. Keep him from leaving the ballpark.
I will say that is a good goal to have, especially because, he's on the other team. But he's on my fantasy team, so I'm still silently rooting for him a little bit, right?
That's tough. But I mean, I guess here's the question though. In this weekend, what are we going for? We going for Padres dubs, or are we going for fantasy lineup dubs? That's the question.
I will always pick a Padres win over fantasy dubs.
All right. Well, that's the sentiment we need to have. As long as we got that hammered out, we're good. But yeah, no more Murakami. It's a great story because obviously by him ending up on the White Sox, that basically means that nobody believed in him. So it's not just the Padres who missed. You can kind of give a little bit of a benefit of the doubt for that. And it's good to see. And here's another possibility too, just to throw it out there. Maybe he needed that kind of rejection to kind of set him straight and really focus his mindset on, wow, no one really believes in me. He can take that underdog mentality and then really run with it. And that could be why he's having such a good stretch so far. You never know. But this should be a fun series. Should be a lot of runs scored. It's unfortunate the bullpen's been so bad this week because, like you mentioned, the Chicago offense is quite good. So this is going to be very interesting. And, of course, they have the power of the Pope on their side. So they're always going to get a little boost because of that. But it's going to be an interesting series to watch, but I'm excited to see it. And hopefully the Padres can win the series and Hunter can win his fantasy matchup. But
right, that's the goal.
All right, but that'll do it for this week's episode of the Slam Diego Show. The Padres, not great, but hopefully looking to improve against the South Side of Chicago in Petco. Should be a great series. Thank you for listening as always, and take care.